evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
Welcome back to another episode of Mahoning Drive-In Radio. Mark here, General Manager at the Mahoning and regular Rambler here at Mahoning Drive-In Radio, joined today by a man whose mythos precedes him. We've been trying to get him on the show for quite a while to tell the whole shocking story. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. J.T. Mills.
Hello.
So back at the beginning of the 2021 season, we took everybody into a small room at the back of the drive-in and beat them senseless. And after that, we had them tell their story. And you were one rascally rabbit who was able to shake out of that noose, so to speak. And now we caught you by circumstance, and we're going to talk about your history with the drive-in, your love of film, and just movies in general.
Well, I guess the reason for this taking so long is just that I often let the work speak for itself. You know, so like,
What more is there to say?
I don't mind talking. I don't mind having a conversation and giving the inside story. But like, you know, I usually, even when people come up to me at the theater and they compliment what was going on for that particular weekend, I'm kind of quick to dismiss and, you know, move on and just kind of like let them enjoy it. So no offense to anybody who I haven't done this yet. I guess I'm a little shy.
We'll bring you out of your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shell. Do you still have that costume, by the way?
Yes, I do, actually. It's in a few separate boxes in my garage, and the oversized fedora is in my downstairs living room right now.
If you weren't there for that weekend, the first time we ran the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films, JT acquired a very, very accurate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle costume that he wore, and the thrills and wide eyes and misty moments with children and adults alike were unforgettable. Which character was that, and what would you call that? Because it was like an incognito turtle.
Oh, it was Raphael. Yeah, incognito in his trench coat from the film when he goes to see Critters, which is a fan favorite film of mine as well. But no, I saw that costume like a while ago online, like for sale, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I made a mental note of it. And then we booked that show, and I was like, oh man, how cool would it be to show up like that? And especially because he was in disguise. So I thought it'd be funny to show up like that. And then when people like point out like, oh my God, can I get a picture with you? I would play it up like, why? I'm just an average Joe here to see a movie. I don't know why everyone wants to take pictures with me.
You with props and costumes are like a lot of friends my age who have kids suddenly. They're like, oh, I need to get that Land of the Lost DVD set for the kid. So for you, it's like, we're doing what show? Well, then I really have to get that life-size creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh yeah, no, it's even though something could be extremely expensive, I just can't resist. I have a problem, you know? So when I think of like, oh, well, I need it for the show. Yeah, that's what it's for. Like, I just can't not do it. It's I don't know. It's like what they say about the things that you don't do versus the things that you do, like your regrets. Like, I would regret not having that costume for that show. So I just had to go ahead and get it.
And honestly, if you ever were pressed at short notice to appear at a costume party, you have a selection to choose from ready to go based on God knows how many years of costumes and characters that you've played at the theater.
Oh yeah, that was a really rough costume to wear. I don't know if I'd want to wear that to a costume party. I couldn't see. I had Zoe leading me around. There's like these little eye holes underneath the mask, but since they're so spaced apart because the head is like wide, I had to like basically look through one. I couldn't look through both. So I had to choose which one I was looking through at that moment. And I was sweating to death in that thing. Because a lot of these times, like either if I'll make the costume or I love to just buy the costume outright just for the sake of the fact it's done. Sometimes things can cost a lot of money, but if it means I don't have to actually spend the time to work on it, you know, and it frees up time for me to do other things, like how I had like that turtle lair set in there. I wouldn't have been able to have done the turtle lair set if I had to make the costume too. So, but when I got the costume, I still found things that I wanted to fix about it. because there's a little. It's probably for the comfortability of the person wearing it, but like the neck wasn't very good, so I had to go and customize another mask, and then basically wear the turtle head on top of the other mask. So I was basically wearing two latex masks at the same time, just so it had like an accurate rubber green neck, but it looked really good.
I'm terrible with introductions. If anybody was unaware listening this far into the podcast exactly who JT is our, I believe the official title is production manager. You are the person who is in charge of the decor at the theater, the outdoor photo ops, the indoor decoration and photo ops. You are more often than not the person who is walking around under the guise of a murderous maniac from one of the films we're showing. When we showed the documentary At the Drive-In, available now on Amazon Prime and DVD, you appeared as yourself, the murderous maniac we all know and love.
Hardest costume of all.
That was one of the rare nights where like we showed a movie and the entire cast of the movie was there. We didn't have to book a flight or a room for anybody. So how did you first get involved with the Mahoning Drive-In Theater? How did you find out about the place?
Well, I'll even go back further than that. So I grew up watching Monster Vision and with Joe Bob Briggs, and
I've heard of him.
He'd always talk about the drive-in movie theater. Yeah, you might have met him. He'd always talk about the drive-in experience. So we have multiple drive-ins up here, and I would go, but it wasn't really those types of movies that Joe Bob might show in his show, or the kind of stuff that I would rent at Blockbuster. It's all newer stuff that modern audiences will take to. I remember like losing my mind when they showed Godzilla 2000 at our local drive-in, because that was just so unusual to see like an authentic Toho Godzilla film.
I saw that at an indoor strip mall theater near me in New Hampshire, and it was exciting to see a Godzilla movie on the big screen. I'd never had the chance before in the time I've been alive.
Oh yeah, it was a dream come true but despite the quality of the film, amazing. And like, I'll always have a little special place in my heart for that movie, just because it was the first one I got to see on a big screen like that, not counting the 1998 Godzilla.
I don't.
Yeah.
I experienced that at a drive-in too. And I willingly went to sleep at one point. I was like, I think I'm done. Checked out.
Yeah. But no, so like I always wanted to watch older movies at a drive-in, and especially horror movies. So I would be looking for when they'd be showing horror movies up this way at a drive-in. And we have the Garden Drive-In a ways down, kind of like halfway point between where I live and the drive Mahoning. So I would go there because they would show a lot of modern horror movies that the Circle wouldn't show. So they were showing like The Conjuring. And again, it's a modern movie, but like they would pack the house, and it was just so fun to watch a horror movie on a drive-in screen and not just a regular indoor movie theater. So I really wanted to see horror movies at a drive-in. And then the Circle would try to show like some retro films, but they were public domain, and they'd end up not always being what they advertised. One time I remember they said they were going to show Night of Living Dead. So I was like jumping at the chance to see that on the drive-in screen. And I show up, and it's the colorized version. Oh. And I'm like, come on. I still, got what I could out of it, but it was just, this is not what I wanted. Come on. So then, eventually I saw on Facebook, somebody clicked that they were interested in coming to Zombie Fest. And it showed up in my newsfeed, this Zombie Fest thing. And I was like, what is this? And I looked up where this drive-in was, and I'm like, oh, it's an hour away. And I'm like, I got to check this out. So I went down there. It was the first ever Zombie Fest. And there wasn't, there really wasn't any bells and whistles back then. It was just the movies on the screen. But seeing old movies on a drive-in screen just was crazy to me. And having all the trailers attached. Oh, yeah. That was an Exhumed show. So Harry's, had all those trailers, and I was like, I was like in love from that first time, because where else could you get that? It was like everything I ever wanted to see at a drive-in movie theater, in one single night. It was great.
It was such an authentic step back in time back then, because there were no frills at all. It was the building, the box office, and the screen. There was nothing to make you think, if you looked around, that it wasn't whatever year that movie came out that you were watching on the screen.
Right. Yeah, I'm in the Wonder Bread building at the time, but
It was painted white with multicolored polka dots. And that's what I called it. It was the Wonder Bread snack bar.
yeah. And inside they had like an old claw machine that didn't seem to work. And it was so clean in there and so empty. And it's just amazing to see what it's turned into. But still, I was in love with the place just from that, because it's just what a crazy experience. And then I remember how nice everybody was. Like, because I remember back then, I think Virgil was the one working the ticket booth and Matt was inside or something. So I remember when I came in and got my ticket, I remember Virgil being like, "Oh, we appreciate you for coming. Thanks." And I'm like, man, I don't say that at my drive-ins. So it was a very friendly, like welcoming experience, even though, like I said, there wasn't really much going on yet other than just the movies, but that was enough for me. So then I went back and I told everybody in my hometown about this place. And I was like, oh man, I'd love to go back. And I'm like, should I go back tonight? Oh. So then I went back again. I went back for the second night. And then I went back for the third night, and that's an hour drive both ways. So it's a 6-hour drive in one weekend, but I don't know. I was hooked on the 35 millimeter retro experience from that point on.
I think that first or second Zombie Fest, a lot of people mentioned that was what finally got them to come out, or what put us on their radar. I think Carl and Daryl said that one of the Zombie Fests was what got them to come down.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed before then. And I still have the flyer on the wall, because Harry would print the flyers out, as he still does, and just leave them all over the place. And so I have like one of the original Zombie Fest flyers thumbtacked to my wall. And I remember it had like Bub on it.
Do you remember anything that ran at that first show? Or can you see the flyer from where you are right now?
Yes, I can see the flyer from where I am right now. It was Day of the Dead, Messiah of Evil, House by the Cemetery, Demons, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, One Dark Night, City of the Walking Dead, Two Evil Eyes, and Revenge of the Dead.
Pretty solid.
And that was Zombie Fest 1.
Yeah. I remember that.
Oh, no.
The flyer too, yeah.
Phenomenal. And a lot of those movies I hadn't seen yet. So that's another cool thing about the drive-in, is that you can see movies there that you haven't seen before, but they've been out for a while, and you can see them how they were like originally presented. So your first time seeing a movie there could be what they did in the 70s. Like that could be your first time seeing I Spit in Your Grave on 35, the way that they saw it back when it first came out, which is a really cool way to see a movie.
That's always been the thing with me too, with 35, is that very, very likely you're seeing the same piece of film audiences saw when the movie first came out.
Yeah. And it makes you glad that you didn't watch it on like VHS or DVD yet, because now you got to see it like in this true presentation. Like that's such a cool first time to see any movie, let alone a movie that's that old.
So how was it that you started becoming involved at the theater? Started decoration or dressing up? Do you remember what the first show you were involved with was? Because I can't remember.
Well, I could tell you the second time I went back was for Evil Dead and Pieces. And it was raining on the way there. And I persuaded one of my coworkers at the time, who loves Evil Dead, that you got to go. So I brought her down, and it was raining, and she's like, "Oh, you think they're still going to play the movie?" And I was like, I think so. So we get there, and there's not a single car there. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. So then I go into the snack bar, and I'm like, are you guys still going to play the movie? And they were like, I think we will. Yeah, I think. I mean, I said, I'll buy a lot of snacks. And they're like, okay, yeah, I think we should. And then so they insisted that they show the movie anyway. So me and her were the only ones there. And I parked way in the front. I think I parked in the grass, actually, because I wanted to be really close to the screen for that. Yeah, and I was just like, this is crazy. And the rain stopped. And I remember I looked behind in my rear view, and I saw like Virgil and Matt sitting out there watching the movie too, because why not? There's no one here. So they were sitting outside watching the movie.
Now, think about that. That was the first time we ran those movies and 2 people showed up. I want to say the next time we ran those movies, we sold out.
Right. I mean, it's a threat of weather too, but even if it rains for Evil Dead, people are still going to turn out. But I'm saying that experience, though, it made me like want to already start giving back because of the fact that I got to have such a personal experience with Evil Dead in pieces. So it was like, I was like really raring to be involved somehow. But I've never worked in a movie theater. I never really wanted to shovel popcorn or anything like that. But I always loved decor in movie theaters. I always loved going to the cinema, and I still remember vividly like the standees for like Gremlins 2 and just various cool hanging things they'd have above the snack bar. And I always loved that stuff. Like I always wanted, even now I still like, I'd like to find that and buy that just to have it. But so I always liked decorating theaters, I guess. That idea of having more than just the movie playing, and you feel like you're celebrating the movie. That was always, one of my interests. But yeah, because of that experience, that good experience, I was just looking for an excuse. And then they said they're going to show Gremlins. And I was like, oh shit, I own some Gremlin props because I have a really, really nice stripe Gremlin replica from Europe that someone made for me. It's very posable and it looks completely accurate. So I was like, oh, this is a good chance to like bring that to the theater. Maybe they'll want to display it. So I brought that one. I brought a couple other ones that I had. And I asked them, I was like, hey, I do have some Gremlin props. If you'd like, you could like put them around the snack bar. And so in a way, it's kind of like what they did when I saw Gremlins 2 and they had the standees. It's kind of like the same thing. I just did it with like props, with actual props. So that was like, oh yeah, totally. They were like super into it. So then I had them behind the stand. I had them behind like the snack tables and everything, so nobody could really touch them. But people loved them. People were coming up to them and saying, oh, can I buy those? So they were like, hey, that was so cool. You brought those. And I was like, all right. That was like my in, I guess. But yeah, it all started with just bringing props that I already owned.
I used to do that too early on. I would bring memorabilia that I had. Like we ran Raiders of the Lost Ark and I was a huge Raiders fan as a kid. So I brought like the game and the action figures and books and bubblegum cards and all that stuff. So there is a proud tradition of setting stuff up in that snack bar. But what I did was really always memorabilia. What you brought was more decor. Like I know the first time we ran Back to the Future, the entire chow line of the snack bar was covered in your stuff that you had brought in. And people were just sort of bowled over by how cool it all was.
The way I always see it, and have always thought before, is that this stuff, like, it's cool that I own it, but like once I have it, I want to look at it every day in my basement or in my room. Like, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of just sitting there, like it's collecting dust. So right. I might as well let other people enjoy it. And I'm not like possessive. I have a thing with like certain like prop collectors that I know of, because it seems like a lot of people just, they buy, like whether they're screen accurate props, like their screen used props or their replicas, they just like to hoard them. And then they like to just brag that they have them, and they don't get to like show them off to people like in person. And I don't like that because like, in my opinion, all this stuff belongs in a museum, especially like the screen used stuff. That stuff belongs in like museums, but people auction them off and they buy them. So I don't want to be like that. I want to be able to like let people see this stuff and get up close and personal with something that they might really care about, just like I really care about it. So I had never had a problem bringing my stuff to the drive-in, as long as people weren't touching it. And they generally don't. People are very respectful of my possessions there in terms of like my decor. Like no one has broken anything, and no one's like seen something that's obviously worth a lot of value, like a critter or one of those gremlins. Or, I have out like Ninja Turtle weapons. I had size on the table. Never saw somebody pick them up, playing with them. Everyone's so respectful of all my stuff. So I always keep bringing it back.
We have for the most part, a very good crowd there who are not any different than us. You know that stuff is cool and rare and hard to come by, and you're just thrilled to be able to be in the presence of it and treat it with respect as you would your own stuff. We had a guy come out for, I don't remember the show this year, but he had all of that those Romero props that he just sort of had in a gym bag that he was showing us. I wish I could remember his name. I think he was from the Pittsburgh area, and he had like the original comic from Creepshow, the screen used Creepshow comic. And didn't he have something from each of the original Living Dead movies?
Yeah, he had that brain prop from Day of the Dead. And yeah, he brought the Creepshow comic. He brought the trowel from Night of the Living Dead, the actual trowel he had with him. And like, I've seen it before. Like I've seen him whip it out. The trowel, I mean.
And bring the trowel. Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Dave, but he's just like that too. He's super cool with, hey, hold this. Like it's crazy.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah, the Creepshow comic. I'm like, Lisa loves Creepshow, and I'm just like, hey Dave, like, can Lisa hold that comic? And he's like, yeah. It's just like, and you can tell it's the actual Creepshow comic because it's like colored in. Like you can't mimic that. It's like you could totally tell. And the pages that weren't shown on screen are like blanks. Like and it looks just completely accurate. So crazy.
So over time, you went from just decorating the snack bar to making more elaborate what we now call photo ops, which is usually a wall or a corner of a room, or now it's predominantly outside, where it looks like you're standing in a recreation of a scene from the movie. Do you remember what the first one of those was? It the Creature from the Black Lagoon, or was it before that?
It's so hazy.
I know.
I remember the first time I dressed up. The first time I dressed up was for Camp Blood. It was the same year as Zombie Fest. So I kind of went from bringing the Gremlins to like not really doing anything because there wasn't really anything that was in my niche or wasn't in my playground at the time that I could bring props for. But then they announced Camp Blood. And then I was partially inspired. I mean, I already had the Jason costume, but I was partially inspired by that Alamo screening that they did that was just being pushed everywhere. Everyone was always sharing about, like, oh my God, how cool is this? The whole watch Jaws like in the water thing that they did.
Oh, they used to call that the Rolling Road Show. I always thought those sounded really cool.
Yeah, it was like you sit in an inner tube though when you watch Jaws from inner tube.
I think the idea with those was that they would show a movie at the location where it was shot.
Oh no, that's on-set cinema, which is cool too. I like them. They go around, they show the movie at the locations, which I'm totally about as well. But the Alamo did they did a screening of Jaws where you sat in like an inner tube on like a lake, and they had like an inflatable screen or something. I think it was in the South where they did it, but I was like, so it was immersive. You're watching Jaws at night on the water, and I'm like, that is fucking cool. So I was like, man, if I do a Jason costume and we have camping at Camp Blood, like that's immersive in itself. It's a whole different thing. So now you're watching Friday the 13th movies from in the tent, and now Jason could come in at any moment and grab you, So I thought that was a really cool concept. So I remember I messaged the drive-in, and I said, hey, so I'm the guy that brought the Gremlins, but I do have this Jason costume. And I sent pictures of it and said, hey, I do have this. Would it be cool if I like showed up as Jason and like was involved with, the camping aspect? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. So, and then I think that got to Harry. Someone forwarded that to Harry. And then Harry messaged me and goes, hey, yeah, you're doing this thing. That's cool. And then there was like some uncertainty if I was coming. Nobody really knew me. I wasn't like super friendly yet. So they advertised Jason was coming, and I think there was a fear that I might not do it. So then they went and tried to find a second Jason just in case I didn't show up. So then I was like, no, I actually am coming. So it's all good. But that was Tony. That was so that's why we have two Jasons. That's where the whole two Jasons are.
I feel like most of our Camp Bloods, there are multiple Jasons, because that's something that just happens at this drive-in, at the Mahoning Drive-In, is that people just show up in costume for almost any show. And we have no idea ahead of time for the most part. It's always a pleasant surprise. But, so it's always cool to have the dueling Jasons photos, where a lot of times they're Jasons from different movies, if I recall.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I think what we did for that weekend was I was versus Jason and he was part 2 Jason. So they're completely different looks. And a lot of the times it works out well, because sometimes like he's Roy from part 5, who's not really Jason. And then I'll be maybe part 6 Jason. So technically there isn't 2 Jasons. It's Roy, or sometimes he'll be like the killer from Motel Hell, so he's got the pig mask on. So a lot of the time, like it works out. So sometimes there might be 2 Jasons, but they'll look different, or it'll be 2 different characters altogether. The one time I think he was Jason and I was My Bloody Valentine, Harry Warden. So it's nice to flip flop, but I remember the first year, I remember being like, I was going to show up, guys. Trust me, I was going to be here. But I developed a good friendship with him, and he's like into cosplaying too. So he's a good person to call if I ever like have an idea. He dressed up as Bub for me when we did Day of the Dead, because I was the Tar Man. So it was the 85 night. So it was Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead, and Day of the Dead, all 85. And so he was Bub and I was Tar Man. So that was cool. But that's how I got involved.
Another thing you've done too over time is bring in your Avengers team. You find people who from conventions or other areas to come in and either assist in creation of photo ops, or somebody who does, well, like Mary Ellen, you brought her in because she did the Critters 2 cosplay and she was an asset to our Critters night. And she came out a couple times. She did the amazing Linnea Quigley cosplay for Silent Night, Deadly Night with you, where she created this costume where it looked like she had been impaled topless through a rack of deer horns, which was just an amazing. and despite what it might sound like to people who haven't seen it by what I just said, it was a rather tasteful costume.
No, yeah, it's great to have those people. It definitely didn't start out that way, though, because, so going back to your question, I think, I definitely did little things throughout like the second year that I was there, but I really think that I took it to a whole nother level with Footloose, because
that was amazing.
And that was, I'll admit selfishly, because I remember my prom experience when I was in high school was, it was fine, but I didn't have a date for my prom. I asked way too late. I was way too shy about it. I really didn't get to ask anybody. So when it came time to be like, hey, who's available? There was no one left. So I was like, I still went, had a blast, it's like a guy's night kind of thing. But like, so when it was like, oh, we're going to do Footloose, I was like, oh, I could throw a prom. And I was like, hey, I'll throw a prom, kind of like to fix what happened in my prom. So, it was partially that, but it was like also the fact that it was just a really good excuse to throw a party at the drive. I didn't throw parties before that time. It was, little things here, little things there, but not a full-on experience like that. And so I watched the movie. I recreated that thing as close as possible, like to such a sickening level. I ordered the same lights. I had like streamers. I had stars all over the place. Like I basically just copied everything I could see in the shots. I got glitter. And I was like, oh, it'd be so cool to have glitter everywhere. And I knew Matt was not going to be cool with that. So I tried to like keep it to a minimum.
Almost nobody responds in the positive to the statement, wouldn't it be cool to have glitter everywhere?
Yes, exactly. But it's in the movie. And I'm like, well, just in case, I'll buy some bags of glitter. And I remember I didn't know what kind of glitter. So I bought different levels of fineness to the glitter. And the one was way too fine. So I remember one of my friends came in to the snack bar dressed up, because the whole thing was come as like it's a prom. So there are a lot of people that were dressed up in dresses or 80s attire. It was 80s party weekend as well. And I remember I just blew glitter all over people, and some of it just went like, it was like Marge Simpson with the makeup gun in The Simpsons. It was just like, yeah. I'm like, oh shit, oops. But it was all good. That was Stacy, who another friend of ours at the drive-in, who one of the convention agents. She's the one that got the glitter in the face. But no, that's what started it, was that, and it was just a really cool experience to do that. I remember we had the live DJ, and I told the guy, like, okay, during intermission, I'm going to run in and I'm going to say, I thought this was a party, let's dance, and then you got to hit Footloose. And it was like super awkward, but I still did it. Because I was still trying. Everyone's just standing around, it's quiet, and then this guy runs in and says, well, come on, I thought this was a party. And it was just, but it was still cool. It was cool to do it.
It was great. And all 4 people who were in there when you screamed, let's dance, Uh,
Yeah.
it wasn't one of our best attended nights, but it was super fun, and the photos were great, and the attention to detail was amazing. And that's something that if you hang around JT enough or around the theater when he's putting things together, you'll have frame grabs from the films in question on your phone, and you will be doing your best to get, like when we did you did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre hook and freezer abattoir setup for Weekend of Terror. You were out there with a headlamp at night while we were playing a movie, painting the blood spatter to match exactly like it was on the back wall behind the hooks in the movie. And that's in the nicest way possible. That's crazy.
It is crazy, but I can't help myself, because it would bother me if I showed up. I mean, I would appreciate the thought, but I know I would notice that detail, and someone there is going to notice that detail. And so for that person who notices it, they're going to be like, that's very good, very good. But yeah, that just drives me nuts. It's partially like an OCD thing. I don't really have that, but that's how it seems a lot of the time with these attention to detail. Like, I really just want it to be as good as possible. I really don't like to accept good enough as like the excuse. Like, it's fine. Like, no, it's not fine. Like, if you can do better, then do better. If it can be more accurate and you're able to do it, like a lot of people that help me out over the years, they don't think they can do it. Like, they don't think they might have the skill to maybe recreate something or paint something or make something. And I always just say, like, well, do your best, take a look at it. How do you think? Like, how do you feel about that? Are you happy with it? Because if you're not happy with it and you see something wrong with it, then give it another pass. You know what I mean? Like, once you're happy with it, I'll be happy with it. Because I feel like people know when something looks good and bad, no matter what, like, they can tell. And if they can tell something is not working, then they could try again. They could try a little harder, and maybe they can. It's all I can ask out of anybody that ever helps. As long as you're happy with how it looks, then I'm happy with it too. So, but that's how I feel with my own stuff. Like, I want it to be until I'm satisfied with it.
What would you say are some of the photo ops or costumes that you've done for the theater over the years that you were most proud of, or you thought came off closest to what you envisioned them as being?
I judge them based on varying things, like how fun was the experience, or how much did people seem to enjoy it. Like the one that we did, which wasn't even a photo op, but the whole thing we did for the Tingler, like that's up there in some of my favorite shows. And it was the simplest gag of just putting the Tingler in front of the light on the projector, and then like running around outside during the Tingler scene in the theater. But we did the drive-in version, which was even cooler. So I'm running around with this Tingler prop, sticking it in people's windows. People have their sunroofs open. I'm like sticking it in their sunroofs. People are sitting in their chairs. I'm like creeping it over their shoulder, and it's exhausting because I'm like trying to run through the whole theater as best I can before the scene is over. But like, people were screaming and like loving it. And it was the simplest gag. And I have a really good video, a really cool video of Robert like playing up with that gag on the microphone after the movie. And like, you hear people scream. Yeah, it's like, scream for your lives. And everyone's like, ah! And it's just like, I love that participation. And I think Harry also from Exhumed, the guy who runs Exhumed, and he programmed that weekend, I think he loved that too. There was a hesitancy, I'll say, from him in the beginning when I was doing a lot of these ideas. I remember when we did the Alien and Predator weekend, the first night he showed up and I had like alien eggs around, and I had a skeleton hung upside down, like all bloody, like a predator skinned him. And I had like a severed predator head. I did all these little things. And I remember him kind of looking at everything and being like, like kind of like implying that it was silly and gimmicky. And like, do I play with these things? Like, but like, he's turned around on that. And now he seems to love the gags, and he loves the participation, and he loves when people are, getting more out of the show than just the movies.
I think for some of us, that William Castle night, or it was like a night and a half really, for Schlockerama in 2021 was one of our favorite weekends or nights ever at the drive-in. That little sort of simple but kind of complicated way that we presented the drive-in version of the Tingler with some audio that was not on the print that we were playing was a huge thing to me that people never would have experienced anywhere else. And then, you know, what you were doing with the Tingler. And that's another thing too that we can talk about is you scaring people in their vehicles in various guises with various props. Like one of my favorites was we had this giant T-Rex head cardboard cutout, looked like it was like printed off the movie for Jurassic Park or something. So it looks photorealistic, but it's a big hunk of cardboard in color. And you had come up to me and asked me if I would help you test in my car at something that you wanted to do. And it was showing up with that thing right in somebody's driver's side window and pointing a flashlight at its eye to replicate that moment in Jurassic Park. And you went around and did that. And you've gone around as Jason and as Leatherface and various other characters. And are there any memorable I know where this is going, but you know, they might any memorable moments from when you were scaring people in their vehicles?
Well, yeah, but before we get to that specific thing I know you're alluding to, in general, that is fun to do. People really take to that. I mean, they hands down, one of the simplest things that I could do there is to throw that costume on or whatever character it is and just walk up to cars. Even if I don't do any decorations, just going up to people's cars during the movie. Nobody expects it, even though you think by now they would, because I've done it so many times for so many years. But I always manage to creep up on it. I just have a quiet step. You know, I guess I walk on my tiptoes, so I'm very silent. And I constantly get people all the time. And everyone has a blast when I do that. And people get pictures with me while I'm doing that too. I remember the one time there was a couple in the way back, and they were having like a huge fight, and they were screaming at each other. So like I was walking around as Jason, and then I go up to them to do my thing. And when I have these costumes on too, like I can't see because I wear glasses. I don't have contacts, so I can't see what's going on, and it's dark. So, you know, it's all acting. It's all acting, folks. But I go up to this couple, and they completely dropped the fight and then start taking pictures with me.
Jason saved that marriage.
Yeah, because after I went to walk away, and the lady came up to me and stopped me and then said, "Oh, just so you know, we were really fighting really bad, and you know, thanks for, you know, helping, and now we're not fighting." And I can't respond. I don't respond when I'm these characters. I drives me nuts. It's a little pet peeve when other cosplayers are there, and I appreciate them being there, but then they like to talk. Or people are like, "Can I get a picture with you?" And they're like, "Sure." And I'm like, "Don't talk." Unless your character talks, don't talk. We don't need talking Michael Myers. We don't need talking Jason. But anyway, so I don't say anything. So I just have to like try to play it cool and walk away as Jason, you know? But so while I was doing that, one of those times I went up to a car, and it wasn't even in the back. It was like kind of by the projection booth, not too far from where Jeff parks. So I go up to this one car, and the windows are down, and which is like that. I can see that from, you know, even without my glasses. I'm like, okay, there's windows down. It's perfect for me to reach in and scare somebody. So I approach this one car, and again, no glasses, and all I see in this car is pink tones, pink colors. And I'm like, what? So I can't tell if someone's in there or not. So I'm getting closer, and I look in, and I start to realize, oh, that's two naked people in this car. and like in a typical Jason movie, the girl notices me first and starts not screaming, but starts like kind of like, oh my God, and doing that. And then the boyfriend looks over at me too, and they both just start dying laughing that I caught them. So I just, you know.
And you impaled both of them.
Of course. That's
you got to stay in
character.
character.
We got to clean up.
We lost 2 customers, but gained a car that night.
You know that couple has told this story themselves from their perspective to you know, their friends, and I can only imagine. Like you're watching I want to say Friday the 13th was playing, like at that moment. It might have been part 6 or something, and like here's Jason. And it's how perfect. It's how like been a memorable moment for both of us. That happened this season too. That's happened again. They didn't notice me this time though, but I did catch people again. And it was with the T-Rex that time. And Zoe was around. I remember because Zoe was filming me because I wanted to get some video footage. So I went up to one of the cars with the T-Rex, and I couldn't tell if someone was in there. I peek in, and it's people hooking up. And I'm like, Zoe, should I still put the flashlight.
Yes.
And she's like, yeah. So I did it anyway. So I could imagine her perspective that time. Have a T-Rex looking in on them.
Imagine if it was the same couple. That would be great.
Yeah.
Every
I know. Why
time
do they
here.
keep doing this? No, it's always it's a good time to do that, and it's been cool when we have celebrity guests because sometimes I'll see them watching the movie, especially when they're with Stacy because they like she likes to watch the movie and they'll watch it with her. So like I will go up to an actor in character, which is cool that they get to see me, do that. It's a cheap thrill, but it's a very effective thrill.
And with the actors watching the film, something that you've often spearheaded is making sure they come into the projection booth to watch themselves on film. And you often will get these cool photos of them with the projectors and their face on screen through a porthole in the projection booth at the same time. And most of them seem to get a kick out of that. Like, I don't know how many have ever been in a 35 projection booth while their film was playing, but it makes for some really cool photos, or it has over the years.
Yeah, a lot of them, they'll say, like, send that to me. And then I'll, like, get their phone number because they want me to text it to them. No, I just have good timing. I know these movies so well, and I kind of lamented a little bit, but when I started going there, I would really watch the movies, like everybody else does. And now I don't really get to do that so much, but it's because I'm just kind of caught up in what we're doing and what's happening in the time. And if it's a movie I've seen a lot, I might be like, oh, I want to get a picture of this moment through the porthole, or, like I want to capture that. Like I got so many good photos with Psycho, and I would have loved to have sat there and watched Psycho. That's the first time we ever ran Psycho. But it was just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to get the shot of the shower scene from the projection booth? Because no one gets to have that. Like, regardless of if I'm missing the movie, which sucks, but who else gets to go and watch the movie being projected in the booth and gets to see the shower scene being projected, standing next to the projector? Like that's its own like experience. So I guess I don't mind too much.
It's always funny to say that, we get a little bummed or disappointed that we can't watch the movie. We're all at work, but at the same time, it's just like you do, and in a little way, miss the days when you were just a customer there and just would sit and see all of it. Like, the nature of what I do is, to a large degree, I can go out if we're not insanely busy. I can go out and watch the movies and have my little walkie-talkie. And if I'm needed for anything, I can jump in on it. But for a lot of us, you go, like with Beth, you go from being somebody who's there all the time watching movies to a position where you don't ever see anything all season. And it's a little bit of a bummer because, we show really cool stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of the time I'm getting ready to do some kind of like gag. So I might have a moment to watch some of the movie, but I might not be able to watch the part that I really want to watch because I have to get ready for something. Maybe I have to get my costume back on, or maybe I have to make sure that the set is all lit up and ready to go before the credits roll. Like, for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I really wanted to run around with the running chainsaw with the blade off during the scene when he's chasing Sally around. Leatherface is chasing Sally, and I wanted to do that, like one of those interactive moments. So I would have loved to have watched that scene, but is it even cooler that I got to run around the drive-in with the chainsaw, with the cast there, like watching me do this? Like that's pretty cool too. Exhausting, but that was really fun.
One of the cool moments, we keep talking about these running around. One of the amazing photo ops from this year was for Zombie Fest, and it was a recreation of the zombie versus shark moment in Lucio Fulci's Zombie. And you had a plastic shark suspended from wires. You'd spread sand all over the platform you were on. Had a very accurate recreation of that zombie makeup. But then at that point in the movie, you emerged under the screen with an inflatable shark that you were punching and wrestling under the screen for the duration of that scene. And it was beautiful and hilarious.
I have to give some credit to Daryl, our avid patron Daryl. What happened was I ordered the inflatable shark as a backup in case the fiberglass shark that I got didn't get here on time. So at least I knew I had something. So I brought the inflatable one anyway, just in case. And then I want to say he was like, hey, you should do a Mystery Science Theater thing and get in front of the screen, like shadow cast this, or Rocky Horror, and you should do that with the shark scene. And I was like, yeah, maybe I could do that. And he said he was going to film it. I've done stuff like that before with like the Slimer costume. When the Slimer scene happened in Ghostbusters, remember I had the inflatable Slimer costume filled with glow sticks?
You had like bandoleros of glow sticks around your forehead and like in a crisscross all over your body. Callie and I helped crack and shake all the glow sticks. And you're like, crack me fast. So we were like cracking and shaking glow sticks while you put on this inflatable costume and then ran around under the screen while local Ghostbusters pretended to shoot you with the proton pack guns. Not to ruin the story, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, no, that definitely happened. That was fun. So like I've done this stuff, and like, yeah, Daryl said, hey, you should do that with the shark, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess I could do that. So that was cool. He got some really good footage of that too. So I mean, like, if someone's got a good idea, like I'm all ears, and that was definitely a good idea. But it was cold. That was a really cold and rainy zombie fest. That was like the first one where it just rained almost the whole weekend. There were some moments where it went away, thankfully. I think it stopped for Zombie 2, and I think Dawn of the Dead was good. But that was a rough weekend. But so I was freezing out there with no shoes on. I was like, why does this zombie have to be barefoot? But got to be accurate.
The thing is that you are such a stickler for detail. Anybody else would have been like, screw it, I'm wearing shoes. But you're like, no, zombies barefoot in the movie. I'm going to be barefoot.
Yeah, everyone was like, for God's sake, man, put some shoes on. And I'm like, I can't.
And 2 prosthetic feet later, you're walking again.
Yep.
But one of my favorites that you did was it was a collaboration, like so much of it is now as we have gotten bigger and bigger. Your brother Steve is often part of what we're doing at the theater, what you're doing at the theater. And he, I believe, created the giant inflatable critter ball for our Critters Fest.
Yeah, because we were so busy around the time of CritterCon, which we dubbed it unofficially, Creature Feature Weekend. Sometimes I have to try to farm stuff out, and it's not easy. Like, it really isn't, because I have a crew of pretty much all volunteers. They're passionate volunteers, but they can only do so much themselves, and nobody is local to the drive-in. He loves the same stuff that I love, and he has a background working at haunted attractions. So, and he doesn't anymore, so he's got that creative itch. So for Critters, I reached out to a couple people. I reached out to Lisa's friend Chris, and he helped last year with the Tarman container, the trioxin barrel. He made that for me. So he's really talented. Like, he's really good at making stuff. So I thought, oh man, maybe he could make a critter spaceship. And I mean, like, I could say it to anybody else and they would say, like, no, that's crazy. But I kind of explained, like, well, if we do like a half ship, and it's a very easy design. That ship is very, like, it's a lot of angles. Like, it almost looks like a Big Mac box or something. So that's how I described it. And I sent him stills. And so he was working on that, and I was fine with that. So I handled the critter aspect because I have critter props, and I ordered a new one. Came also from Europe. A lot of these good things come from Europe. So a lot of talented people over there. So I was doing that part of it, and then he was making the spaceship, and I thought that was all we really needed. I was like, okay, that's good. If I even get a spaceship, my mind will be blown. But then I was like, oh man, it would be cool to do a critter ball though. And my brother was like, I can do that. And I was like, how are you going to do that? And he goes, easy. We'll get a big inflatable beach ball. And I was like, they make beach balls that big? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, all right, if you think you can do it. So I basically just put it on him. If he was able to do it, great. If he wasn't, well, we have the spaceship. But he did pull it off, and he was even working on it on the day, because it was like a 2-day project. Like, I told him about it, and then like 2 days later, it was pretty much done. So he was still working on it at the show, but it turned out great. And I even think the critter ball might have stolen the attention from the spaceship because people just did not expect to see that giant critter ball. And we even rolled it around after like the night was over, and we knew that we couldn't exactly save it. During that scene, another interactive moment during the giant critter ball scene in Critters 2, where you're just like, let's roll this fucker. So the three of us, we got behind it, and we pushed it. And we filmed that too, and it was really cool. And that was another cool show where the Kyotos were there, and they got to see all the cool things that we did, and they really appreciated it. And that meant a lot to us because I'm a giant critter fan. And, you know, they've never been treated to anything like that. I would say in general, a lot of our guests don't get treated to things like this, especially at screenings of movies. Maybe at conventions, there'll be some cosplayers and such, but they don't usually get to go to a screening event and then have a spaceship built for them to take pictures with. So I think, that was such a also rewarding show to be able to say that we put on like the first ever critter convention and that we had those things. And people came from all over the country for that show. California and Florida, all the critter fans united and just came out for that. And I think they really appreciated that we did that for them too.
And it was fun watching you talk to those guys because you have the screen used flattened critter that when we went to a Monster Mania convention years ago, I was with you when you had them sort of authenticate it. But just talking props, I've got a video, I think I might have posted it on Patreon, where it's just you and those guys talking props and just talking shop. And they were just so open and willing to chat with anybody. And they were, again, that this very, very thin line of division between us and our customers at the drive-in. It was the same thing. There's a very, very thin line between the guys who made the movies and the people who liked the movies. They were all monster movie fans, really.
Yeah, well, they don't get enough credit. And I mean, that's what I go to the movies for. I mean, actors are great and all that, but it's the creativity of like the effects and the creatures and the props and the monsters and all that stuff that's what I love. That's why I love movies like Critters and Gremlins and the Monster Squad. I love the designs, and how good they are. And like that's what I'd like to talk about. I could talk to them all day about that stuff. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, they also did. And I think that's where most of their fandom comes from, is that movie. But it was nice to have all these the cult critter fans come out and give them love. And I think they really loved it to the point I think they'd come back. And if they do, we'll just have to up our game for that one.
Yeah, some really, really great photos that night. Unfortunately, once again, the rain just exploded upon us. They were doing a Q&A with Mr. Lobo, and at some point, just the rain started hammering in, and everybody had to kind of run for cover. But up to that point, it was a wonderful evening. So if you can, take me through, and our listeners, what's your process? You hear there's a show that we're going to do or a film we're going to show, and how does it go for you between hearing that we're showing something like, say, I don't know, The Great Smoky Roadblock, and when you have a finished 18-wheeler sitting there with a facsimile of Henry Fonda behind the wheel? What's your workflow? How does it go? How long does it take for you to go from being realistic, hearing that we're doing Chainsaw Massacre, to that set that we ultimately had?
Not long enough. I wish I had more time, but with our schedule, it's just jam packed. And I don't do something for every weekend because I just can't. And it's kind of nice when I find out that there's something going on that I just don't care about. And it's like I'm able to give some up, which is great because it gives me some more time to focus on something that I do care about. That month in general was insane. And I was not even planning on doing Texas Chainsaw at first, even though I love Texas Chainsaw. I have like a whole shelf of Texas Chainsaw Massacre figures. I think I have all of them. I'm a fan. And like, I would love to do that, and which I did. But like that month we had everything going on. We had like Back to the Future. We had, what else was in that month, for God's sake? It was September. It was just, there was nonstop. Every weekend was huge. Universal Monsters. It was just like, it was hard to keep up. So I wasn't at first going to do anything for Texas Chainsaw. But then when we had like the cast coming, and it was like, it kind of forces our hand. I kind of have to do something now because the cast is going to be there. So what I'll usually do is, some movies are like instant. Like I boom, I know what it is. Like I know what the idea will be, depending on like how big of a fan I am of that thing. Other times I have to like maybe put the movie in, really brainstorm. Like with the Zombie Fest one, like there was 9 movies to choose from, 10 movies with Dawn of the Dead. So it was like, well, which of these movies has an iconic scene to do a set for? that people will get it, because the thing has to be something that people will say, oh my God, look, it's that thing that, it's that iconic thing. If it's something vague, they're not going to really care. And like, I'm kind of running out of a lot of things, especially for Zombie Fest. What else was playing that weekend that was like, not that it was not, it's not just a big movie. It has to be like an iconic moment to recreate. And Dawn of the Dead is great, but we're not too far away from the mall, from the Monroeville Mall. I mean, we're in Pennsylvania, so you could just drive there if you want to go to the mall. So I didn't want to do anything from Dawn of the Dead. So when it came to me, like, oh, what's in Zombie? What's in Zombie 2? What can we do? So I thought at first I had some ideas, and I was like, the shark scene is clearly the thing to do. So then it turns into like, well, how am I going to do that? So then I had to think about, how am I going to pull that off? Like, how would we do that? And I've been using banners.com a lot lately, and they're expensive because of like the timetable that we have to work in, but it's great to have a backdrop. And some things just, you just need a backdrop, and other times we need set pieces in front of the backdrop. So it's just about visualizing the scene in your head, and what does it need to like, jump out at people. It has to be interesting. It can't just be a backdrop by itself. So there has to be like a character, backdrop and a character, backdrop and some furniture, backdrop and floor. Some of the sets need a floor. Some of them don't need a floor, and they just need sand, dirt. It's complicated. That's why it's really nice to have some friends who have different talents. John Demmer is a giant help. He's like one of the biggest contributions to sets that I've ever had there. And so a lot of the ideas I'll have to throw his way and say like, so listen, if we did this, would you be able to do this? Because if he can't do the thing that I need him to do to build like with his carpentry skills, then I might as well just throw the idea out because it's too complicated. Sometimes we'll reuse stuff, like with last year, Camp Blood and Universal were also like back-to-back weekends. So what we did for that was we took the cabin for Friday 13th and we turned it into a Bavarian village house.
I never saw that coming. Like, I knew we had done it for other things, but all of a sudden with some just slight redecoration and additions, it's like, and now it's a Universal Monster cabin.
Yeah. And again, I have to be like, can we pull this off? Are you able to come out and do this? Because it's carpentry involved. I am not a carpenter. I can come up with ideas, and I can make stuff with my hands and costumes, and I could make props. But in terms of like sawing wood, it's not my thing. I barely have any power tools. So, it's like reaching out to like these assets that I have and like, can you do this? And to them, like, it's a lot of work for him because he has to drive all the way out from Newark, New Jersey. Like, he's not local. So for him to come out here is like, it's a big chore, but he's equally as creative as like my brother and Jonathan, who comes out and does the lighting a lot of the time. And he has tons of props himself. Like, these are all just passionate people that love to impress and decorate. And just like I was saying with me, like, a lot of them don't need the thanks. It's nice. They have to be thanked. I give them 1,000 thank yous, but they don't want the spotlight. They don't need to be the center of attention. They just can stand back and enjoy seeing people like what they did, and take pictures with it. Like, John gets nothing but joy out of seeing people posing with me in my Leatherface costume with the set that he helped build. And that would not have happened. That Texas Chainsaw set, being that it's like all wood. When it comes to building a house, it's John Demmer all the way. If it's more like an organic set, so if it's like when we did, again, Universal, I did the Wolfman thing. That was all, it was like trees, and it was like a full moon backdrop. And like, that was all me because it was very organic. And then we used to do the sets inside. Before we moved outside, we did them all inside, if you recall. Those were very organic sets with backdrops. And that creature from the Black Lagoon you spoke of, I remember I had to drive a big log, all the way down from my area down to the drive-in because I needed the creature to be crawling over a log because all I had was...
Where did that log come from?
It came from a state park up by me. So me and my friend Sam, who comes down to the theater sometimes, we went into the woods and I said, I need something for this creature because it was like a half body. It was like, it's like a, I forget what they're called, but it's like a grave crawler thing. You put it in your yard for like Halloween, but it looks pretty good. Like I've seen people hanging above like their creatures and Black Lagoon pinball machines and stuff. It's pretty nice, but it's only a half body. So what am I supposed to do with this? That's another thing about all this, about talking about, where does the ideas come from? A lot of it is just like what I have to work with to be creative. So if I only have a half creature, what can I do with this? I'm going to have to make it look like he's coming out of the lagoon. So I need like shrubs and like a log and like, a fake water floor mat kind of thing. So, that sometimes that'll dictate what the idea is like the limitations I have. And usually it turns out okay. But in terms of some of my favorites, I've thought about it, and like, I would definitely say one of my top 5 that we've ever done is the Trauma set. The one from this year. We've done Trauma 2 years in a row.
Would you care to describe what that was? I mean, and that, again, you want to talk about a group effort. Just about everybody who works on the creative production aspects had a hand in that.
Yeah, that was that's like you're saying, like, how do you come up with that? I never saw the movie that we were showing. The big premiere was Trauma's newest film, Shakespeare Shitstorm. I have not seen it. Most people have it. Tom D'Amico from Trauma sent me a screener copy. So Lisa, my girlfriend, for those who don't know, is a giant Trauma fan. And the last year when we did Trauma, almost all the ideas came from her because it's not in my wheelhouse. We screened a few movies together, and then she had some of her own ideas, and we basically did all that, and it was great. So I was very looking forward to Trauma this year, but I never saw this movie, and I had no access to this movie before, so I got to watch it, and there was the iconic scene, as I'm saying, from this film, is a scene where the scene titular. Yes, exactly. It's the shitstorm. The shitstorm happens very early on in the film. Spoiler alert. And you got to recreate the shitstorm. So there was a scene where a whale jumps over like a party boat and just defecates all over the boat, all over the people standing on the bow of the boat. So I'm like, we got to do that. I guess we have to do that. And previously, Zeneca, one of the assistants for the props department, I'd say, said that because she contributed last year to Trauma, the Trauma Dance / Traumathon event. So she wanted to help this year. And she watched the trailer and she saw there was a whale in the trailer. So she was going to make like a tale of some sort. But then now that I saw the movie, I could actually say, okay, you know what? That's the moment from the movie. That's like the iconic scene from the movie. We got to do that scene. So then I got back to her and I said, so let's take that whale tail idea that you were saying. You want to do a tail, and let's like turn it into a bigger set. Let's do the scene. Let's do the defecating whale scene. So everyone contributed. This was not going to happen if everyone didn't pull their weight, because it was the most complicated set we've ever done, because it involved running water, and it involved, well, it started as water. So we wanted to do the ship. So I had Zeneca do the tail. I had John basically build the railing and like the actual boat part of the ship. And then I had to print out the backdrop. So one thing I should mention, which is really cool, is that our mutual friend, the documentary filmmaker himself, Al Manelli, sometimes I'll reach out to him and he'll get me like a really high resolution image to use for backdrops. And how he does that, which is very creative, is he'll take a photo of whatever it is I need printed with a like high-res camera. So now the pixels are boosted from his camera, and it's the same image basically. So now the image I have will be huge. So that's what I did for the shitstorm itself, backdrop. And then what we decided to do was we wanted to have an actual like the whale shitting on the boat. I don't know how else to paint this picture than just to be literal.
An upside down geyser of brown, basically.
It sounded like it wasn't gonna be possible. Like, it sounded so crazy. I'm still to this day like astounded that we pulled this off. But it was completely a team effort. So we had the whale, basically it was like a fountain, and it circulated back into the whale, so it went out of the whale into basically a shit pile that we had to make, because they had to go somewhere. So we basically emptied out into a bucket that I covered with foam, and I painted it to look like a shit pile, and that went back through the floor, up the wall, back out the whale tail. And we were able to do that ideas because Lisa's friends with Doug Sackman, who works for Troma. He does a lot of the effects, and he's the one who did the effects for that movie. So this was like the first time that we got to work with like an actual effects person. We wouldn't have had that whole running water thing. It probably would have just been like streamers or something if we didn't have him. But he said that he could bring the pumps that he used for the actual film. So not only were we actually like recreating a special effect, but we were working with the special effect guy who did the effect in the first place. So that was really cool. And then we also did the Troma set I did last year as well, which was basically Toxie's house. And it looks really good. And with me and Lisa's costumes, I always play Toxie, and she plays my blind girlfriend. But yeah, Lloyd loved it. Lloyd showed up, and we fired that thing up. And I'll never forget, he just did not expect that to happen. And we tried to keep it a secret. Tom tried to keep it a secret from him. And that was another one of those cool moments where we got to actually show off something that we did for a creator or an actor. And, it was great. Gross, but great.
Yeah, that was I couldn't believe it. You had explained what it was going to be, and I saw some of Zenica's work in progress photos of the sculpted whale tail, but for some reason I didn't realize there would be that pump that would recirculate the, let's be polite and call it water, and it was amazing. Because it looked like there was the deck of a ship, and there was just never-ending stream of liquidy poo was coming out of the back of this tail, and it ran for hours. It was the stupidest, most disgusting thing we'd ever done. And Lloyd Kaufman and his wife show up, and they are overjoyed to see it and have photos with it, and it was just beyond ridiculous. But that's what we did.
Do you want to talk about the after effects of that?
I think perhaps you should. So what was the mix that created the liquefied refuse that kept cycling through there?
I'm not 100% sure about everything that was in there because it's Doug's secret recipe. But I know that it had lots of corn, and I want to say it had maybe oatmeal, and God, I don't even know what was in there, but it was his own special mixture that he also used for the movie. So it was accurate, but it had long-term effects. And let's just say, that was definitely a party, and everyone felt it for like the next month after it was over.
If it had just been water and something to color it, it would have been fine. But the putting of organic material in there that splattered all over the place, and I think sat in that bucket for a few days afterwards, it got like rancid. And it smelled so bad out there. Like the guys were like raking the ground and spraying things on it and hosing it off, and the smell would not go away. And apparently, we talked about it in another podcast. Beth was talking about it, and apparently there was like an 8th grade dance that we had right after Tromathon. Yeah. And I think they might have covered up the poo pile, but the smell was large and in charge.
Yeah.
There.
No, I mean, like it was a problem, but looking back on it, like that was just nuts. Like that was such a crazy thing we did. And even Justin, who works on Joe Bob's show, does the producer, he was involved producing that film. And I think he sent pictures to like the crew. I want to say he was in like Bulgaria or I forget where they filmed it.
He often shoots in Eastern Europe when he's not doing The Last Drive-In.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's where he sent, because over there he said that they were like laughing, like, oh, this movie will never be something. And so he was like, oh, look at this. Like they're recreating the set. How about that? Like, so it is, it's taken off, much to their chagrin. You know what I mean? So that was cool. It was rewarding. It just was, a problem that lasted for a little while, and maybe to this day.
I think, on a lonely, cold night when the wind blows just the right way, you two will gag.
Yeah. We'll hear whale sounds.
If it's not the smell of the fertilizer from the cornfield across the street or the cows that live on the other side of the woods from us, it's the smell of the whale from Trauma Dance 2021.
Yeah, this year in general has been, every year I always think like, this is like, how do we top that? And it's getting progressively harder, I'll admit, because it's just a lot of work, and we're getting bigger and bigger. But every year I'm like, how can we top this? Like when we did Back to the Future, we had that screen accurate DeLorean. Like I never thought that would ever happen. I always wanted to have a DeLorean. We've had the some stock DeLoreans there, which was always cool, but like a chance encounter where I saw that DeLorean at a Burger King. So random.
I was just going to ask if you could tell that story because it's wonderful.
Well, no, some things like fall in your lap. Like it's a miracle. Like I really didn't expect that. I always wanted to get a DeLorean there, and I know some people who have one, but they don't live anywhere in the vicinity. So it'd take a lot of effort to get them to come out. But I think it was Halloween weekend or the weekend before Halloween weekend last year. And I was stopping at Frazetta's Costumes, which I have to shout out to them too, because they're not 24 hours a day, but they're basically 365 days a year Halloween store that's in East Stroudsburg. And they're always there if I need any like random supplies. They get a lot of masks and stuff. So like I got that Wolfman mask there. So I was going there, I was frequenting there to get some supplies for Halloween weekend. And I'm driving back, and all of a sudden I see in the corner of my eye, I'm like, oh, there's a DeLorean at the Burger King. And I'm like, wait, there's a DeLorean at the Burger King? Like, what? Like, just with the lights on and everything. And I'm like, what? So I had to pull over. And, I was just wandering up to it, talking to the guy. Because I've done other Back to the Future events, I kind of like have something to say. So most of the time, people wander up and they're like, oh, yeah, cool, Back to the Future. I remember that. 88 miles per hour. But like, I'm like, actually, like, hey, do you know this person? Like, I went to this event. So they started talking to me, and I met the owner, Peter. And I said, hey, so there's this drive-in I work at. And I'm like, would you ever be interested in coming out? Because I said, like, I would love to have this car out. And like, I don't, we've done the trilogy before, but I really don't necessarily want to do it again unless we could up our game. And this would be like the perfect way to up the game. So he was interested, and like, unfortunately, he lives in Rhode Island. He was just visiting his parents, but he was only in the area because he had just used his car for a Discovery Channel special, and Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd were there, and they used his car like for the set. That's why he was there. But I was like, oh my god! And it's the most screen accurate one I've ever seen, which is very exciting for me because I've seen a lot, and I love a lot, but like, all the details in this one were spot on. So the fact that he was willing to come out, and then he made good on that, and he came out this year, and it was so cool to have his DeLorean there, and to sit in it. He drove me around in it, and just it's things like that are like, I don't know how I can top this.
And we don't know really what we're playing next year yet. So you'll learn as probably I do, and then those gears will start turning, and it's just like most of us don't know what you're going to do until we show up and it's there. And it's always amazing. Like I walked out and just looked at I didn't see any stages of it. I just walked out and the underwater shark versus zombie set was just there. And I was just blown away. And it happens again and again, seeing the set for the boiler room for Nightmare on Elm Street coming together the way it did in the matter of a day or two was really amazing. And it was, we talk about the team aspect of it a lot. You're the mad genius behind it, but John Demmer comes in and he's drilling holes and fabricating things, and then Jonathan comes in, he's doing the lighting, and it's just it's amazing how each one of those adds to that the overall impact. And then you're there with this Freddy mask that looks like it's real, which is just creepy. And you look out and there's this line of people that goes out into the darkness who are standing in line waiting to get a photo taken on the set, which is it's just wonderful. And as far as the photos look, they look like they're from the movie. Like you as the Wolfman from the original Universal Wolfman, the combination of the costume and the set and the lighting and the fog effects, it looked like it was a photo from the movie, or it looked like it was a Aurora model kit. For some reason, I don't know, maybe it was the mask. Something kept making those photos look like a model. It was weird. You didn't even have to do that weird focus shift thing. They just looked like you were plastic.
Yeah. I noticed that. Yeah, that's I'll take it. That's cool. I'll put that in the running for favorite sets is the Nightmare on Elm Street ones, like this one and the one last year. Like we built the front of the Elm Street house, like, and these are things that were not possible without, a professional carpenter like John Demmer, like, because he's able to help me utilize the vision for what we wanted to do. Like I have to run it by him. Like, would we be able to do that? And he said, no, we can't build a house. Like I probably could have figured something else out and scaled it back and done something else that would have been, cool. It just wouldn't have been it's just crazy. Some of the sets that we've done because of, these professionals and these other geniuses that show up and help out. These very giving people. But yeah, those were both really cool sets. And, another one where we had different actors on those sets too. And I remember a guy from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, it was Jesse. He got a picture on the set for the Elm Street house that he posted on his Instagram page. And like, it looks like he's back on Elm Street. And all the people that commented are like, oh, are you at the house? Like, are you in California at the house in Hollywood? And like, nope, he's at the Mahoning Drive-In on this set that came together in like a week. Yeah, it's insane. It's just crazy. Mark Patton was that actor, and it was so cool to see these people interact with things and be kind of impressed with themselves. Trying to think what other good sets we did, but there's I've been there for 7 years now, so it's really hard to go back, and I'll be reminded sometimes of some of the good ones and some of the photos. And sometimes like it's not even like I was saying, it's not even how good it was just a good experience. When me and Mike Kenny dressed up as King Kong and Godzilla with those silly inflatable costumes, like they weren't exactly the best, but like even though I had like the miniature set, I had the buildings and the backdrop that looked like we were in Tokyo and everything, and the little tanks rolling over the hill, the costumes were a little silly. But, it was just fun. It was just fun to like be Godzilla that weekend and have him beat on his chest as King Kong. And then the following year when Mike wasn't available, I just don't think he wanted to do it. I mean, it's hard. When you put on these costumes, it's not easy. Like you sweat. It's like taxing. You don't think it would be, but a lot of characters, like maybe they have a limp. Maybe they're like hunched over. So like after a while it hurts. I'm carrying that chainsaw around. That's a heavy chainsaw. I don't know how Gunnar Hansen did it, but it's a heavy chainsaw. And it's after a while, it's like
that was the
hard.
Accurate chainsaw. You made sure that it was the same chainsaw they used in the movie. I mean, not the exact same physical chainsaw, but it was the same model.
Yeah, same model, and it ran, which was important. So that was I couldn't show up with one of those Spirit Halloween chainsaws, But so even when I'm not doing an accurate thing though, like. The next year, I had to have Lisa put on the Kong costume. So, like, so knowing that she was in the Kong costume, and there's like a crowd taking pictures of us in these silly costumes,
right.
And I'm like trying to like whisper to her, I'm like, Lisa, beat in your chest a little. You're King Kong, come on, And she's just like, what do I do? Like that was just like that almost makes it more like on a personal level. That makes it more fun to like remember those kind of moments. It's not always about this, but I mean it is for the people that come. I want them to have a cool thing to get pictures with, and we always do it for free also. Like we don't charge for photos. It's not like a $10 get your photo in the Elm Street house. Like I just want it to come with the experience, and most people don't expect that. They always think like, well, how much is it? And it's free. I don't want to speak because I'm playing a character, but I'll be like, Zoe, tell them it's free, or whoever's my photographer for the weekend, like tell them it's free. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it's just my contribution. As I said, going to the beginning of all this, like I don't know anything about 35. I don't know anything about like running a website or, even promotion to an extent. It's nice when we get to be involved with like picking the films, because normally that's not what we do. But if I have an idea that I think is just like I'm really, really sold on and like I'm passionate about, you know, Virgil will let me pick the movies. Like Universal, I think I pick the movies for almost every year because now no one really knows those old black and white, you know, monster movies more than me do. So I'm actually able to like pick the movies and then helps me pick the set. So this year I had to do a Wolfman. I didn't do a Wolfman before, you know, so I was like, we got to do Wolfman. We got to bring Wolfman back so I can do a Wolfman set. That's always helpful when I'm able to help program a show.
Weren't you sort of behind what ultimately became Janet and Jamie as well?
Yeah, well, so for that weekend, we already had Dee Wallace coming, and it kind of forced our hand in the sense that like, what theme do we do for the rest of the weekend? And like, I had nothing, you know. It was really late in the game, so it was like, well, maybe we could do since she's coming and it's Halloween with Dee. What if we did a Halloween Heroines of Horror weekend? Maybe just show, you know, 2 movies that are each a different Scream Queen. Since we have Dee, so what are we going to do on Friday? What are we going to do on Saturday? And I mentioned Christina Ricci, and because I thought we could do a family night. So that's where that came from. And then you beautifully came up with the name of Ricci's Pieces, which was great. It was like instant. That's clearly the name. Like no debate anymore. That's the name of the show. And then the following night, it was like, well, let's do Jamie Lee Curtis. And like, we've done Halloween the last, 2 years in a row? I
think the
3 years in a row,
Halloween
something like that. Yeah. So it's kind of redundant, but the Colonial, and this is something you've probably spoken about on other podcasts, but like when you book movies there, you got to book something that isn't going to compete per se with other screenings in the area. So if the Colonial's doing Halloween, we probably shouldn't do Halloween. And they were doing Halloween as well as Halloween 4, 5, and 6. So we can't do those. But we never did H2O, and they're not doing Halloween 2. So maybe we'll do Halloween 2 for like the completionists, you know, so that way they can see Halloween 1, 2 for us, and then 4, 5, and 6 in H2O. But we couldn't get H2O. It wasn't available, or the print was bad. I don't remember the story. Do you?
We couldn't locate a print on that.
Right. Okay. So, we'll still do Halloween 2. It's also a Halloween year because of the Halloween Kills movie. So it's always good to capitalize on something that's current. But then, so what do we do? And I think it was Virgil actually that said like, well, let's do Psycho. You know, let's do that. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. But, you know, you had an idea, if I recall, that would have been cool too. That Lisa really wanted to do your idea. She said it was your idea. You can tell me if it was or not. But it was like just like a spook show weekend where we just show like old classic Halloween-y things. Was that your concept?
I don't know if it was mine, but I would go see that.
Yeah, well, Lisa said it was. But it was something like, you know, where we don't necessarily play like, you know, like Halloween, but we show like a lot of classic stuff, and we storybook everything with, you know, some classic Halloween commercials and Halloween shorts. Or I thought it would be cool to do little episodes of shows, you know, and just kind of like recreate.
Oh, I had talked about that, a year or so ago as a classic TV Halloween show. And
right.
Something we might do in the future. It goes off the 35 thing that we try to stick to, but it's something we might do down the line.
No, I think that's a great idea. I would love that if you could like recreate Halloween's like for, you know, your childhood on the screen. And then like, because in general, like our shows are more than just the movies, obviously. Like that when I first started going there, when it was just the movies. Now there's so much more to it across the board. And a lot of the time people just want to hang out. So it would be cool to do a weekend that was just a bunch of, you know, little cute things that we could show, that people could have a Halloween party and still like watch classic things and enjoy themselves, and not have to necessarily do like a the movie's playing kind of weekend. You know, that would be really fun. So hopefully that'd be cool to do that next year, because we definitely can't do Halloween again. But yes, that's how that came about. So there are a few shows I do get to throw out there, like Critters I've been wanting for a long time. I remember I did pick Critters the first time we ever did Critters, when it was just like Halloween party. It was a Halloween party show. The weekend was Halloween. And it was Critters and I want to say, what was it, The Gate? And The Gate 2?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I got to pick Critters then too. I won't pick a movie unless I have an idea to go with it. So if it's something that I've picked, it's because I really want to do it, you know?
Well, for that first Critters show, you had all of your accurate looking critter props. Well, I say critter props, they were critters. And they were on hay bales with really cool like mood effect lighting on them in the snack bar. And that's back when I was still sleeping in the snack bar. So there was a night where I was, settling on my air mattress in my sleeping bag with like a giant many-toothed critter looking down at me.
Yeah. Yeah. How many coffins have you had to sleep next to at this point?
So Jonathan often will bring these coffins, and they were actually, instead of being screen-used coffins, they were people-used coffins in some cases. And he would set them up in the snack bar and leave them there. And again, I would sleep in there. And there was one night where I thought about maybe I'll sleep in a coffin tonight. But I sort of gave it the pushing my fingers down on a test. It just didn't seem like it would be comfortable. I don't think they're made for living people to be comfortable inside. But the number of nights when I was staying in the snack bar on the weekends that your props were looming over me, like the various Phantom of the Opera, the Mummy, or these mannequins that out of the corner of your eye, it's always a person standing there until you look and say, oh, it's got no face or it's got a mask on it or something like that.
Yeah, well, Lisa would know all about sleeping in coffins. If you remember when I brought you and Val out to get your picture taken for the Hammer weekend.
Well, Lisa was dressed as a vampire bride because we were showing Brides of Dracula for the Hammer Vam Party weekend. And great coffin, great makeup, great fangs and all that. And you bring me and Val out for a photo and the coffin has a lid on it. And I'm like, oh, she must be somewhere else. And then you lift the lid off the coffin and Lisa's laying inside there. And I just lost it cracking up. I'm like, how long were you in there with the lid on it? What if I was really hard to find on the lot that time?
Yeah, it was warm in there. But that means a lot too when people get to play ball with like what I want to do. Because like a lot of my ideas are a little eccentric. And I will completely admit, that it's people don't really realize when they come. But maybe they'll realize now that like to play along with some of these things, you really have to be out there. And like Lisa's out there with a corset on, or she's out there in like a skimpy little dress and it's freezing, but it's accurate to the movie. That's what the vampires were wearing, where a lot of people, like I was saying, they got to play. Like my brother will even play characters for us. He had that amazing alien costume that he did for Halloween with D show. Like it's just you have to really be a special type of person to be a cosplayer, and I love those people, and I'm glad that they come out, and I appreciate every time that they come out on their own and they dress up without me having to like stick them with a stick. Like it's just really cool when they want to be involved.
So we're at the end of the 2021 season. That's in the books now. We're in the off season right now. So do you have any like hopes and dreams for things you would like to do in future seasons? Either a type of thing you'd like to do or specific films you would love that we would be able to run so that you could, work your devious magic with them?
Yeah, there's definitely some still left that I would there'd be dream shows. I was quoted in some paper as saying that Karate Kid was one of my dream shows, and we bumped that one off the list last year, so everything is good to go with that. But I'm trying to think, what else would I want to do? Well, I know I would really love to do a Tremors weekend, but then there's the challenge of like, how do I make like a graboid? And like, that would be difficult, but I could just picture how cool that would be to have a tremor. They're not called tremors, but I still call them tremors, coming out of the ground at the drive-in. That'd be really cool. It'd be like the giant ant, but instead we'd do a graboid. I would love to do a Child's Play weekend. That lends itself to like, well, what set is that? I mean, I have a Chucky, but what kind of set do you do for Child's Play? I think it's being discussed. You heard it here first, folks. I think we're going to do maybe The Fly, right? That's been talked about. Maybe we're going to do The Fly.
I think that would be an excellent remake double take.
Yeah, so if we do that, that would be cool. And I'd throw it out to John Demmer about if he has any advice or, if you can contribute to building like a telepod. That'd be really cool. That'd be a cool photo. these are just spitballing, not guaranteed to happen, but this is what goes through my head. I would like to bring back some ideas, like that Footloose one. I would love to do that one again, because now I think it would do a lot better. The second night was okay, if I recall. The first night was completely just pathetic, but I think that one would do good now. So I think I would like to do something like that all over again. I don't know. There's a bunch. We've definitely haven't hit a lot of franchises. Surprisingly, we have never really done Hellraiser. That would be cool.
No, I think there's something with rights for the first Hellraiser that make it hard for theaters to show. Either it's hard to get the rights or it's very, very expensive to show the first movie. But I'm sure we will at some point.
That would make sense, because I know it's a lot of the licensing for shirts and such are always like Hellraiser 3. And they always seem to start at Hellraiser 3. So I'm wondering if that rights issue extends to the second one too, because like even the figures, it'll say Hellraiser 3. I'm like, okay. Actually, you know what I would love to do? I'd love to do like a little rubber monster type of weekend, little creature type of thing. So I would love to do Ghoulies too. So I would love to do like a Gremlins, Ghoulies, and Critters show, like the 3 big ones,
Ankle biter weekend.
Yeah, there you go. I'd love to, even if Ghoulies was part of VHS Fest, because Ghoulies 2 is a straight-to-video title, that would be cool. I just feel like we're missing some Ghoulies action. And Trick or Treat Studios has come out with some cool Ghoulie props that I could use. So that would be fun. But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely, they come to me. I'd love to do American Werewolf. We didn't get to do that this year for the 40th anniversary, I believe. We didn't get to do it. So I'd love to bring that. I'd love to do a werewolf weekend where we just have all werewolf movies. And it has to be a full moon. That weekend has to be a full moon, or we show werewolf movies.
I think that would be excellent.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, no, there's a bunch of things I'd like to do, so we'll see. But if we end up doing any of those shows, listeners, you can bet that there'll be something crazy going on. So keep your eyes open. But I'll take this opportunity also. I just want to give a big shout out to everyone who has helped me with sets and props and whatever over the last few years. Because yeah, it's hard work, and it's thankless, but it's also rewarding at the same time. Because people don't really know who did what. And it's easy to assume that maybe I did everything. And in some cases I have, but in other cases I did have help. And, so Zeneca and John, my brother, even like some of our drive-in friends, Mike, Kenny, and Jay, and Daryl, and Carl, and hell, I've had people at my job, like Cassie, who is the one that went to Evil Dead. I've had her come down and dress up as zombie characters and such. Tina has helped me hang things in the stand before. Callie has helped me do things before. You have helped me.
Will and John and Dave.
Will and John, Dave, yeah. Zoe, all the times I've had her dress up or chaperone me around because I couldn't see where I was going. Yeah, they all, and there's just a ton more that, I've done little things here or there that are just, it's a giant help. I couldn't do a lot of this stuff if someone didn't pitch in when I desperately need them to, or help me drive something. So yeah, thanks everybody. And I hope you guys help out in the future as well.
You mentioned Zeneca. She will sometimes do events that you don't do. Like she did Wizard of Oz for us and the Tim Burton show and some others where she specializes in, part of it is set construction and decor, but the most interesting part to me is the video projection. Like these interesting video projection mapping things. Like there was one Trauma show where she constructed the Trauma skyline from the beginning, like their logo, and projected that video clip over the top of it. So chances are if you see video projection stuff, that's probably Zeneca's work. It's nice to have an alternate, so to speak. Like if you're just flat out and working on something else, somebody who can, I don't want to say fill in, but also add to that whole ambiance thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I just can't do them all. It's just physically impossible. And I do work a full-time job, so it's great.
I do just about everybody who works there, which is so impressive at what everybody can pull off when you're doing it in what's left of your spare time.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, usually these people don't say no. They don't want to say no because they know that I'm usually like in a spot and I need some help. I need a hand. So I really I couldn't be more appreciative of, anything that they've done. And so, like I said, hopefully next year, I'll have even more help, and, I'll let them take the reins sometimes too. There's a lot of times where I will let the Texas Chainsaw one, I totally said, hey, John, I need you to help with this. What do you think we should do? Would you be able to do the front of the house, or should we do something else? Should we do the dining room? Should we do, and he said, I think we should do this. And it's like, hell, man, let's do it. Because I knew he could do it. And so, they have some free reign too, and it's not all me. And I want to make sure that they get the proper credit that they deserve.
Well, thank you for joining us for this full-length All JT All the Time episode. It's a chat I've been wanting to have literally for almost a year now, so I'm glad we finally did it. And you'll be back with future episodes when we do roundtable discussions and various things. People have been yearning for Maximum JT, and now you have it. So we thank everybody for joining us for this episode of Mahoning Drive-In Radio. Don't forget, we do have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/Mahoning Drive-In. These episodes of the show will be available on Patreon a little bit ahead of when the general public hears it. Otherwise, you can listen to us. Well, I could tell you where to hear us, but you're listening to us now. So good job. You found us. On behalf of the entire staff at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, thank you very much. See you in April, and see you next time at the Drive-In.
See you later.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.